to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Hello there, my name's Ben Worthington, and in this tutorial we are covering 3 Band 8 techniques for the IELTS Speaking, and this is part 2 of a 2-part series. In the first one, we covered listening, and that sounds, I know, incredibly basic, but I fleshed it out and I shared a technique called reflection, where you reflect the exact same tense, structure and vocabulary that you heard. And later today I'm going to show you the next technique that follows reflection, one that where you embellish it and you make it better. But we're going to come to that in a second. Also, in the last tutorial, we talked about learning the vocabulary from where you're from so you can give eloquent answers. Now, you may think, I know the vocabulary where I'm from, but trust me, until you push yourself, until you put yourself in that situation, you cannot know what you don't know. Third technique I shared was frameworks, how frameworks can just speed up your preparation time. They can boost your confidence. We've got lots of frameworks in our speaking confidence course, and not just basic ones. We go into sort of like offering you the structures as well, and idiomatic phrases as well that you can easily incorporate into your framework. And then the final one was advanced structures for abstract descriptions, and you need these, and you also need an effective way to master them quickly and easily and confidently so that you don't mess up your exam come exam day. Now let's jump into today's first technique, but first let me just mention who I am. My name is Ben Worthington. I am the founder, owner, manager of IELTSPodcast.com. I've been teaching IELTS now for well over 10 years, and I got into teaching English because, I'll be honest, it was the only job that was around, but I quickly realized, I was like, this is for me. This is for me. And in the same kind of like, in the same breath, in the same, so like in the same, with the same motivation, I got into IELTS because I loved teaching English, but I realized, okay, I like this so much, I want to be measured. I want to see if I'm getting results. And that's what led me into the IELTS, because with the IELTS, you know if your techniques are working, because they're going to go to the exams and they're going to tell you afterwards, I got a 7, I got an 8, oh, I got 6.5 again this time, and this is how I started the IELTS podcast, by asking experts, testing out what works, what doesn't work, and just releasing it into the courses, into the tools that we now offer. So let's jump into today's first technique. This is called using perspectives to extend your answer. Now, a lot of students struggle with, like, okay, am I speaking for a long enough time? And some students even in terrible situations, they just give like 1 sentence answers, and they struggle trying to extend that answer. So what we can do is, and this is a great technique as well for boosting your vocabulary, but what we can do is look at it from different points of view. So for example, imagine we've got a part 3 question, and it's like, do you think festivals are important in your country? And you say, yes, I think festivals are important in my country for a number of reasons. I think they bring the older generations and younger generations together. I think they help preserve our culture as well. But some festivals can be quite noisy. So I guess if I looked at it from, a student's perspective who is studying for an exam, I guess they might not share the same viewpoint, I guess they might not see the festivals as important. So to answer your question, I guess it depends on what perspective you take, you see. And this way we can extend the answer. We could give the examiner more material. We can give them a very comprehensive answer because we've looked at it from a few different viewpoints. And this takes practice to pull off. And the best way I've found to get this perfected is just through like repetition and mastering the drills, mastering the answers, mastering the sentences that set up the next part of the answer. We could use sentences like, however, I guess if you looked at it from XYZ point of view, you might say that, yeah? And now, one thing is knowing what to say, but the second thing is sort of like knowing how to say it accurately and how to say it appropriately in the right question. And this is what we cover in our private classes, and we make it automatic, and it just sounds so much better. It just flows. As you saw with Catherine, this is sort of like one technique we did that was incredibly effective. Now, the next technique is a little bit more basic, and this is more for your preparation towards Band 8. Now, when I was a teenager, I was incredibly nervous, and my mind always went blank. I was so anxious that I struggled looking other people in the eye. I could only hold it for like a second, and then my head would go down. And I just thought that that was who I was. But then when I went to Spain, and I don't know, for some reason learning a foreign language just sort of like helped me be somebody else. And then I transferred Spanish Ben back into English Ben. It sounds bizarre, but anyway, along the way, though, I also did some self-work. I did some work on myself, and I found a book called How to Talk to Anyone. Because I was really struggling, you know. I'm like 20 years old, and I still can't hold a decent conversation. And especially in another language as well. So one technique, though, that I learned was somebody's talking to you, okay, and maybe you don't even understand the full sentence, but it could be like this: college, Liverpool. And what you do is you just pick out the word that you understand and you just repeat it, and you're like, oh, Liverpool. And they're like, yeah, I studied there for 3 years. Cats and dogs every night. Oh, cats and dogs? And like, yeah, the weather was horrible. You see? And this way, you just develop the conversation. It is a little bit passive, but most people just enjoy the sound of their own voice anyway. But the important thing, why am I sharing this with you? Because in the IELTS exam, you need to improve your listening skills. A tutor once said to me, the speaking exam is a listening exam and the writing exam is a reading exam. There's a lot of truth in there to unpack. Let's just focus on the listening part. So for the speaking exam, you need to understand what the student is, what the examiner is asking. And obviously you can't use this technique, would you say festivals are important in your country? And you say, yeah, festivals. No. So how do you use this technique? Well, you use this technique in your preparation, because to score high in the exam, you need to have these listening skills. And we cannot just jump straight into reflection, which was the first technique I shared in the first tutorial in this series. We have to build it up. And it can be overwhelming because you're like, how can I have a conversation? How can I even do reflection if I can't even have a conversation? Well, this technique gets you towards being able to hold a conversation. So you can start off with just picking out the main word or the word that you understand in that sentence, just to keep the conversation going so it's not a complete car crash. and in the meantime, you continue developing your listening skills. Right then, final technique that I want to share with you today is called the embellishment one. Now, this was an absolute game changer for Catherine, because Catherine, coming from the Chinese education system where there is a lot about rote learning, about just memorizing, and this might be true in your education system too. Because she was from this background, the reflection technique was really good. It's kind of like followed the same structured, organized way she's been learning all her life. So it was very quick and easy for her to adopt this. However, as I said before, we don't want to be sounding like a robot for the entire class. So what you can do is, once you've got the reflection, so let's just rewind. We've worked on our listening skills. We've been just by immersion. Okay, we're now out in the wild and we're talking with other people in English, and our listening skills are still not there, but we don't want to give up now. So we're just getting the main word from the sentence and repeating it just to facilitate the conversation and give ourselves time and give ourselves room to start improving our listening skills. Okay? And then we've moved up to reflection. Hopefully we've got a strong, competent teacher who's just hammering it to us every single class, because that's the fastest way to get your listening skills up, to get this technique mastered. And now you can master it, whatever the question is. Would you buy fishing gear on a Friday if you weren't going to go fishing until the summer? Yeah, and it just gets longer and more complex, and it's like, yes, I would buy fishing gear on a Friday even if I wasn't going to go fishing until the summer. Okay, and we've got it up to that level, but it's still robotic. What we can do next to make it sound more natural, to boost our score, is one of the ways is we can say, for example, this is just one of the techniques we shared with Catherine. I shared with Catherine. So imagine now you've got a question that says, should students be allowed to study their courses from home rather than going to classes? Now the key here is, if you get a question like this and you hear the word should, what you should do is you should immediately decide, okay, is this a yes or a no? But you've got to add some emotion in there. So you cannot say like, yes, students should be able to study from home and should not be forced to go to the classroom. Okay, the reflected answer. But what we can do is we can say, absolutely yes, students should absolutely be able to study from home rather than being forced to go into the classroom. You see, and this is the key. This is the transition from a robotic, accurate answer that should be coming automatic now, that should, make you sound very accurate, but, as we said, like a robot. So adding this technique, and we can embellish our answers in other ways. This is just an example of one technique we share, but adding this way, because we're building on a technique that we've already mastered, the answer should be highly accurate, using the same prepositions and the same or similar vocabulary. And we've got now 15% of our answer perfect. But to avoid sounding like a robot, we add this absolutely or definitely. And then the next stage, this is where it starts to really pull away, is we say, so imagine, this is exactly what we did with when. Once we got the reflection mastered, we started adding the absolutely, definitely, undoubtedly, all these beautiful adverbs and adjectives. And then once we got confident with that, we started adding, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, students should be able to study from home and not be forced to go into the classroom. Okay? In the second part, I couldn't remember the exact question, but it would usually be an exact reflection of the question. But here, what we've done is we've added some natural intonation as well. So we don't just say, absolutely, students should be able to study at home. No, I say, absolutely. Yeah? Now we sound like a native English speaker. And then we say, without a shadow of a doubt. And again, because we've drilled it so many times, because we've been doing this like at least 30, 40 times per class, and I'm not exaggerating there, it starts to become, it starts off sounding forced and unnatural. But because we do it so many times, it starts to sound natural, and you boost your confidence is boosted because you've done it so many times that when it comes to the exam day, you can just absolutely nail it and sound natural, sound competent, and you've used this idiomatic expression, so you're just picking up points left, right, and center. You see? And this is exactly what we did with when. This is one of the small things, because we did so much work together. But this was one of the things that just got me really excited. One of the exercises, because from this point, it just made the class more fun. She sounded more natural, and because she's such a smart student, she was also using it in the appropriate time. So it wasn't sort of like, which do you think is better, nuclear power or wind power? Absolutely. No, it wasn't anything like that, because she was smart and we'd done some solid preparation before we got to this point. And it was just good fun. And I know she's told me afterwards that she's using this now. She's in Canada and she's using the exact same techniques that we helped, that we developed, we mastered in her private classes, and she's using them. So, these are skills that are not only useful for the IELTS exam, but also for your life in English afterwards. So, consider like your IELTS preparation. I mean, you can get so much more out of it if you, if you prepare effectively, if you prepare with a decent tutor. You can get so much more out of it. You can get skills that'll help your career, help your communication. And this is true not just for the speaking, but for the writing as well, and for the listening. If you can become a strong listener, your career is going to advance. I'm going off topic now, but the main thing I want to say here is, for this tutorial, we looked at 3 techniques. We looked at using perspectives to extend your answers. We looked at, I don't think I called it, but it's the fishing hook technique, in that when somebody's talking, you try to pick out the main word and you use that as a fishing hook and you repeat it, sort of like pull it up out of the conversation, repeat it, and this facilitates the conversation to continue, so you can continue building your listening skills, and it just gets you out there speaking with other people, which is what you definitely need to build up towards your IELTS exam. And then the final technique I shared was the reflection embellishment, just how to evolve from this robotic skill we learnt in the first instance to make it sound more natural, more human, in an accurate fashion, and help you with your pronunciation score. Because when you're saying absolutely, it might sound kind of basic, but there's a lot going on there. You've got the intonation, you've got the correct intonation for a positive affirmation, which helps you, which improves your general overall communication, because we all know English is a melodic language where a lot of emphasis is placed on intonation, and it's difficult to teach, and a lot of students a lot of teachers don't even cover it because they don't know how to. But if you do want to get, a band 8, band 9, band 7 in the speaking, then get in contact. We'll be launching these private classes soon. There's finally space. There's going to be like 3 or 4. I've got space for 3 or 4 students. I rarely do this. That's why you hardly ever hear me talking about these private classes. But every now and again, I take them on. The main rationale this time, there's 2 main reasons. 1, I have space in my calendar. 2, I want to continue developing this speaking chatbot that's going to be released very soon. So that's it from me. We need students. We've got spaces for 3 or 4 students depending. There'll be a special offer launching soon, so keep an eye on your inbox. Sign up to the email newsletter. When you go to IELTS Podcast, you'll see a big pop-up there. Sign up. You'll get information about how to pass the IELTS exam fast, and you'll also get information about the new private classes that will be launching very, very soon. Just one final thing. I don't advertise this podcast. I don't advertise these tutorials. I give them out for free. If you found it useful, I'd be very happy if you could give us a 5-star review on Spotify, on iTunes, on Gaza, on whatever platform you're listening on. And perhaps share it with your friend as well if you think they would benefit. And together we'll just make this IELTS exam easier for everyone. And we can get you to Canada, to New Zealand, to Australia, to Ireland, to Germany, to England, wherever your goal is. Have a beautiful day. Keep moving forward. Keep moving.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.